Okay? Now we've got the overlap here, right? Let's look at some of the overlap. Sensory issues, get that big spoon away from me. I like the little spoon, okay? Sometimes I, like certain textures. I don't like tags on my back. Certain, shoes I don't like. The feeling on pressure on my feet. So all kinds of different things can happen both sides, right? For different things. So the overlap here can be either way with sensory issues, right? Sound, taste, touch, all those things. Hyperfixations, it's when you start pushing things out of the way to do the thing you really want to do, right? Interrupting, again, so you're like cutting people off, saying, hey, I'm not, feeling it, right? Or, hey, like, I need to tell you this thing I need to tell you before I forget about it, so I'm going to tell you now, right? That might be something. Insomnia, not being able to sleep well at night, pretty evident, right? Restlessness, if you tell me 4 o'clock, I'm not going to look, but I'm going to look, but I'm not going to look, but I want to call you, but I don't want to call you, but that whole process, that would be that. Stimming, right? Favorite song, telling someone that same story, talking about your hyperfixation. There's many ways this would happen. So just something to be aware of. Fidgeting, right? So moving your chair, or not being able to sit still. Difficulties with friendships. It's like, man, I haven't hung out with my friend and I want to see them, but I haven't seen my friend in a long time and I want this. So sometimes it's kind of being conflicted with how you feel about talking to people and wanting to be around them, but they also don't want them to be a bad friend. So you're kind of like conflicted on how to feel about these things. So again, sometimes it can be difficult to navigate some of the and balance some of these things. Creative, you typically find solutions that other people don't see. So they're always like, oh my God, how did you think about that? It's just the way your brain works. OCD tendencies. I just really like my parking spot. I just really like being respected. I just really enjoy this, right? So different ways that you might find that, hey, like, I am very particular on some of the things that I like, and I can't unchange some of those things, and that's just how my brain likes the way it's set up. Even though sometimes you can kind of fight it a little bit, but deep down it's going to bother you if it's not done your way. Executive functioning struggles, again, this is keeping up with responsibilities. Once you lay in bed, it's like, I can't get up. Sometimes getting projects started can be really difficult. Once you start the project, you're good to go, but just that initial start can be very challenging. Emotional dysregulation, well, obviously, again, having some of these disorders, you have more heightened feelings, more sensitivity. Sometimes you don't feel understood, and this can be very challenging to get a lot of compassion from people around you. And then obviously depression and anxiety can be very common with these two diagnoses. All right, so that's kind of the information. I'll wrap up today with autism and ADHD. I'll probably make some more videos just kind of going into details, explaining a little more about some of the more deficits and some personal anecdotal stories and things that you can kind of understand from the diagnosis and ways to kind of support each one. All right, thank you guys. I'll see you guys around to the next video. Bye. Hey everybody, Sebastian back with another video. Today we're going to talk about alcohol. Now a little bit about my background with alcohol. I actually grew up in a household where my father was an alcoholic. Luckily he's been sober for almost 10 years now, so that's been really nice. But definitely growing up I experienced firsthand addiction. I also worked in a recovery center for several years, so I did intakes and I did assessments and support and providing mental health for a lot of people with a range of different addictions. Now let's talk a little bit about alcohol, because alcohol is really interesting the way it works with the brain, and I want to kind of give you guys some insight on some challenges, especially if you deal with someone with addiction or maybe battle it with yourself, or even just see symptoms of these situations happen when we drink alcohol. All right, so let's think about what alcohol is. It's obviously something we can drink. It kind of changes the way we feel physically and emotionally, and a little bit of information about how alcohol affects us. It actually affects the prefrontal cortex, okay? And that's our executive functioning. So this is where our adult brain lives, essentially. So when we start drinking, we start disabling our ability to manage our adult brain, manage our executive functioning, essentially like cutting off access, essentially, to part of our brain, right? Now, addiction. So there's a couple ways to look at addiction. Mainly what causes the addiction, right? Well, obviously it's a deficit within oneself and life, and alcohol can alleviate some of that symptomology. Alcohol is really good at stopping anxiety, right? Any kind of like overwhelm stimulation, that's essentially what we use it for, especially even when in the medical field, where we have things like benzodiazepines, which are very similar in the chemical impact it has that alcohol would. That's why people that take a benzo may act drunk or seem pretty drunk, and this is also why we can't drink alcohol with benzos, because it'll make you instantly black out, right? Because again, same mechanism of the brain. And actually when you're withdrawing from alcohol, you actually have to experience the shakes and all the same things that you would have with withdrawing from benzos. And we even give you benzos to subsidize that withdrawal. They usually give you Librium, but yes, benzodiazepines will get used with alcohol.
So just some interesting information that when a benzodiazepine, which is used for anxiety, is also used to help with, in the same situation as alcohol would, well, you can see some similarities here. One of them can be bought over the counter, right? But as we know, alcohol has a lot of detrimental factors, especially biological and physical. And so let's look at really the initiation of the addiction, which is more likely an emotional addiction, right? So when we feel that anxiety, that adult brain stressing us out, debilitating us, alcohol kind of makes that part of the brain go away to some extent, right? Not as active, not as strong, disables that executive functioning. And so the kid brain pretty much gets to go release, right? It's just full 100% go-go mode, right? That's why when people drink alcohol, the more they drink, they typically act like toddlers, right? They act like little kids, you know, I don't want to get in the car, or, you know, you can't tell me what to do. If you ever been a designated driver, you would see very quickly how difficult it is to navigate and negotiate with people that are drinking alcohol. Again, very similar to talking to a toddler in some ways. You can kind of have to talk to them like a toddler when they're drinking, right? So as people get more drunk, they start losing that, you know, stress and anxiety part of them, and they start letting more loose, as you could say, right? Increasing the spirits. Now, the problem is that over time, the withdrawals will physically start to hit you, right? So the addiction may go from a mental addiction and then become a physical addiction because now the body is so used to it and reliant on this chemical that it needs it now. The problem is that we build endurance because it is kind of like poisoning your body. Your body's like, don't worry, I'll become more resistant. This thing won't affect us. Well, when it does that, now you require more of it to feel that initial intoxication that you were looking for, or that buzz. You might not get that buzz anymore. And you can get to the point where you're drinking so out of hand that you actually start to experience some of your anxiety symptoms when drinking. So you might start actually getting anxiety attacks even when intoxicated. So it can reach a pretty bad level of what we call tolerance, to the point where now it doesn't have the same effects and you need it to physically cope. So bad on both parts. So yes, the addiction can be physical and it can also be emotional, right? Lead to dysfunction. And so as people drink alcohol, we know that they are more irritable, they are more impulsive, right? They're very kind of, it's me, my way, and the highway, right? Or you leave and that's it, I'm done. I don't want to engage with you, I'm going to have my way. So really when we look at alcohol, we want to understand that as people progressively drink, they can become maybe more impulsive, a little more emotional, more reckless, and that when they get sober in the morning, their adult brain activates, but a lot of times they don't want to hear these things, right? It's almost like a reminder of, look where you're failing, look what you're doing. So they'll start drinking in the morning to get rid of that voice, except when it starts causing the shakes. Then they're drinking in the morning because they want the physical disruptions to stop, right? So again, depending on the mechanism, what the dysfunction is, might depend on how they're coping, right? So if they're having physical withdrawal symptoms, that's a definite component of why they're drinking. Or if they're having emotional dysregulation, another component of drinking, and maybe a combination of both, right? Because especially as you physically are addicted, it's very likely that your emotional challenges have already been there, and so now you have both of these, right? And that's what creates this cycle that, hey, now I'm stuck in my addiction because I can't get sober physically, right? I'm physically dependent, but I'm also emotionally dependent because without it, that stress mechanism starts to kick in, and when I'm not used to feeling that stress for long periods of time, it almost makes it feel worse. This is why when people first start kicking or withdrawing, you got to remember they're not just physically withdrawing, they're also emotionally withdrawing because this thing was providing them a sense of comfort, whether it was negating the adult side of them, so that stress and anxiety component was gone, and now it's activating again. This is why when people first come into a withdrawals clinic or they go into any kind of program, it's very hard for them in the beginning because, again, they're getting hit with all those thoughts that they've been escaping. So all that negativity about how bad your life has been, you've been able to avoid it, well, guess what? You can't avoid that now. Now you're having to deal with it, which is why when we're in a rehab program, we're trying to teach them, again, how to activate that adult brain. Hey, let's take a shower, let's care for ourselves, let's have some kind of responsibility, let's have some goals and productivity, because again, this brain hasn't been functioning, so now we have to get it up to functioning. But the same can be said with someone that doesn't know how to have fun, which again, the same thing with addiction, right? Their fun used to be tied in with their alcohol use and dependent, right? So now when we're trying to get them sober, we're gonna have to readjust what fun looks like, what productivity looks like. So we have to reorganize and re-engage the brain in a way where now we're providing them with the resources they need to function on their own, right? So first coming into recovery, they're very in that kid brain of like me, And then over time, as the adult brain reactivates, it can start looking outside of themselves, which is a pretty clear and consistent when you see people first get into recovery versus like 60 to 90 days of being in a program. There's definitely some differences in the way they're, being conscious and cognitive and aware, and they're definitely not engaging the same type of behaviors they were when they first got there, which again, very consistent with the fact that they lack experience in this type of mentality, right? Whether you want to call it masking or whatever, they haven't realized that yet. But as they get more comfortable with it, as they have been in recovery longer, a lot of those deficits will kind of start to sink in and kind of slow down. So it's really good. It's really good for people in recovery to just know that, hey, the beginning is very challenging. You're almost, again, it's like going back to the gym. You're having to like relearn things, and it's going to be really hard for that first couple weeks when you're back at the gym reorganizing your body. But then over time, your body's like, I got this. We can do this. So think of recovery like physical rehab for your brain, and it's just been in a deficit for so long that we have to get oxygen to those parts of the brain again. Metaphorically, you could say. And we want to restructure the brain when we're in recovery. That way, we don't fall back into old habits. But anyways, that's kind of some insight on alcohol. So just remember, guys, alcohol is really hard because it disables the adult brain, which is why people act like giant children at times when they're drinking. They make impulsive decisions. They have challenges. So just something to be aware of. And then again, if you know someone with addiction and problems, don't be surprised if they act very childlike with you, very impulsive, say very blunt things, and don't know how to apologize, or very resistant to change. Almost see it as a toddler brain, right? This is a child brain. I'm not dealing with an adult. There's another, that person's not here. However, when they're withdrawing the next day or they're sober, that's when you're going to get that full access to the brain. And it might be a limited time that you might get that access, but just be aware that that's a good time to be able to engage with people. All right, guys, that's some information I have about alcohol. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask, and I'll see you guys on the next video. All right, take it easy. Bye. Hey everybody, Sebastian back with another video, and today we're going to talk about the importance of balance and how remaining balanced actually can provide us with a lot of resources and tools to help us within our day-to-day lives, especially when it comes to communicating with other people and kind of getting our needs met in our relationships, right? So let me talk a little bit about what that looks like. So we know already we have our child brain, which is our id. We have the adult brain, which is our super ego, okay? Now, we also have our ego, which is that core of that confidence, that individuality, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, right? Now, what happens when we balance? Well, that means where we have our fun needs met, but we're also allowing ourselves to remain productive. So we're getting both of our stuff met. I'm working out, I'm paying my bills, I've got my career goals set up, I'm, maybe working on a certificate, the next part of the evolution in my department, whatever that may be. So I got my productive stuff done. I'm also working on my fun, which I'm, working on my passions, hobbies, and interests. Maybe I'm working on a surfing competition I want to do because I've been looking forward to it. Or maybe I've been working on my karaoke skills and I want to go, like do a karaoke night every week. Or I've been getting really good at pinball and I want to hit the 1,000,000 mark on my pinball game. So whatever that may be, that's your child brain, right? Meeting those needs and being able to let that kid out and enjoy parts of yourself that maybe in the past you might have neglected or felt awkward sharing those things. Like you're not, I don't know, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this, I should be doing this and this, I should be working, but you finally kind of accept, no, I need these things in my life. I need Frisbee golf, right? I needed the time that I spend doing artwork and poetry. Those things are necessities to me. They're your lifeline, really. So when we balance these things out, right, it allows us to actually be able to enjoy other people, right? And I'll tell you how. Let's say I'm in a situation where we're at work and people are kind of slacking off here, right? So I might need to be the person that says, hey, let's get down to business. Hey, we got to get this done. We got to get this report done. This thing needs to be handled immediately. Let's get this work done. Let's focus on changing these dynamics. And so I might have to be that adult, like, hey guys, let's get our stuff together. We're going to leave at 3 o'clock. Let's go, right? So I'm the motivator. Boom, right? So now we're all motivated. We're all working hard. We're all getting our things done. But sometimes people are so stressed out and overburned out. I need to tell them, hey, remember to enjoy life. Hey, remember, we're almost done, guys. We got an hour left, and then we get to go home, man. It's Friday. Let's go enjoy ourselves, right? I'm reminding them that life isn't so bad, especially when we need that reinforcement. Now, the reason why balance is so important is it allows me to navigate between those two sides, right? It allows me to say, hey, this is what I need for the enjoyment of life, and this is what I need for the production of life, to get down to business. Now, when I balance, I can support the people around me, because if I need to be that supportive adult, okay, fine, we can pick you up. If I need to be that encouraging kid and say, hey, well, it's going to be fun, it's going to be fine, I can be that person too, right? So depending on what brain I need to be in, I can kind of support the other person, right? But if I'm lopsided, I can't really be that other person they need to be. I can't balance myself out so that I can regulate for the people that need me to regulate, right? So again, if everybody is taking care of this balance, then we are just mutually enjoying each other, right? We both can navigate of, hey, let's get down to business, but hey, let's have some fun time. It's like when you're a coworker and you're getting your job done, but you're also able to talk about life and say, hey, so how's your family go? Yeah, are you working on that one project? As you're still working, right? You're actively doing what you need to do. You're remaining balanced. It's like when you can have fun with a customer because you know how to do your job so well that you don't need to be stressed out all the time. And they can feel that authenticity from you. They can feel that confidence in you that this person seems to have their life together and regulated, right? You seem calm. You seem balanced. You seem confident. Now, why is that important? Well, it allows our ego to be at its highest point, right? Because look, ego right here is at its highest point when everything is balanced. The second you imbalance, ego is no longer at the highest point. Ego is taking a hit. Ego goes where the brain goes, right? So if I'm super stressed out and oh my god, and I'm not having enough fun, right? That's gonna be a problem. If I'm having too much fun and I'm not paying my bills, that's gonna be a problem. See how my balance is off either way? So the highest point of the ego is when balance is there, right? When everything's equal, that's the highest point it can be. Okay? So confidence, right? It's all about the balance. The more balance I have in my life, the more I can give to other people. This also applies to relationships, right? And friendships, including like family dynamics. Again, when people are balanced, we can easily support each other. It's the second people get imbalanced, it's going to cause turmoil within us. I can only pick you up so many times before I'm not going to keep wasting that energy to pick you up. You need to pick yourself up. I can give you the tools and elements to help you do that, but you're going to have to do it. Or, hey, sometimes you need to get out and have some fun. I can't be the only person in your life that brings you fun. You're going to have to find some other sustainable, ongoing enjoyments and fun that you can do on your own. So either way, you can see the person's going to have to balance out. When we're balanced, it allows us to engage with more people in a more fulfilling way, in a more reasonable way. And when we're not fulfilled, then we become a burden to the people around us and ourselves. So just something to think about, right? Also, one last little tidbit of fun here. When do you become friends with your kids? I hear this sometimes too. It's when they've learned to balance, right? When they're paying their own bills, but they're also alleviating their own burnout and not getting depressed and anxious about their own life and challenges, right? So when they're self-sustaining, you can mutually enjoy each other because you're both balanced. So when you're balanced and they're balanced, everything's balanced. It's homogeny, right? So the more we can work to get ourselves balanced, the more we can work to get ourselves unified within ourselves, the more we can enjoy the relationships and people around us. All right, guys, again, this is a heads up on balance and why it's so important. Remember, sometimes we got to be an adult and get down to business, but don't forget to be a kid sometimes and not take life so serious. All right, guys, see you guys on the next video. Take it easy. Bye. Hey, guys, Sebastian back again. And this time I'm going to talk about childhood trauma and how it affects you. And just some insight on what happens when the brain is traumatized as a kid. And not in the same sense that we think like I'm getting beat and stuff, but what trauma really is and how trauma can affect us. So first we need to understand the brain, and the brain develops in 3 stages. 1 to 5 years old, or 0 to 5, your little kid brain. 6 to 11 is your ego, I call your heart, your soul. And who are you? And then 12 to 24 is your adult brain. All right, so that's like the last stage of brain development. This is your independent brain, your anxiety brain. I want to be independent brain. So that's the 3 brains. Now, each stage of development has its own natural mechanisms where children will activate, right? They want to know certain things. They'll experience certain things. And the way you parent them has a lot to do with outcomes as adults.
So 1 to 5 years old, our little kid brain, I love you, hey, don't leave me brain. This brain is the time when children are learning how to process feelings. Kids are big feelers. They just feel everything. They don't think. They just feel, though, because everything's in their stomach. They're feelers. So this is the age where you recognize an emotional state, because children don't know what they're feeling. They just feel it, and you help them understand what the feeling is. So if they're doing a potty dance, you say, you doing your potty? Go bathroom. Or you need to eat? Go eat something. You tired? Go lay down. Recognize the feeling. Provide a behavior to alleviate that feeling, to help them understand, when I feel this, I do this, I feel better. So they now understand the mechanism of feeling, behavior, experience. Feeling, behavior, I know how to handle this. What happens in toxic families? Why are you still crying? Why are you still like that? You fine. You ain't nothing. I had a hard day. You don't have a hard day. Stop crying. So what happens? Kid shoves down. Kids is disassociating. Kid doesn't want to experience feelings. And then what? And then they bottle it up and bottle. And one day they're just going to snap. Fight, flight, freeze. Fight, tantrum, flight, run away, hide under the bed, go somewhere down the street or whatever. Freeze, disassociate. I ain't going to say nothing. I'm just going to keep it here. I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to run away because I'm going to get in trouble. Okay, so what happens? They grow up, and what do? The same tantrums, run away, loveless relationship. I don't want to fight. I don't want to walk away. I'm just going to let it pass. Nothing ever changes. And they keep living in this cycle. So 1 to 5 years, I don't know how to feel. I'm lost. And you keep not knowing how to feel, and you keep shoving down the emotions and over trying to regulate yourself, which just causes you to burn out and act out. So 1 to 5, I don't know how to feel. 6 to 11, this is the age where you're learning how to, build up your identity. I want to be with horses. I like Legos. I like this music. I like cooking. I want to be a dancer. Whatever you may be. You go to your parents and you say, I like these things. Your parents, because you don't have the adult brain to activate those things, they have to help you activate it. Oh, you want to do horses? Let's get you classes. Let's get you books. Let's watch videos. Let me encourage your individuality. Let me support you where you're at in your life. Help you become the plant you're supposed to be, the person you're supposed to be. What happens in toxic families? Why you want to do that? It's a waste of money. It's too challenging. If you bring it up again, I want to put you in it. Talk about it again. Watch what I do. See if I put you in it. What happens? Shove down. Negate my own desires. Lose interest in my own passions, hobbies, and interests, right? Well, then what happens when I grow up? I don't have time. I don't have money. I'll make up excuses for myself. I'll never self-actualize. I'll never activate. And on top of never activating, well, guess what? I won't be able to sustain myself and my identity, which makes me more susceptible to other people. I start creating an identity because other people told me other ways. Well, what ends up happening because of that? I lose myself every time people just don't want to, you're not doing it right. Ugh. Why'd you do that? I don't even care about you. You lose yourself every time. You don't know who you are. So you struggle with developing an identity because of 6 to 11. 12 to 24, it's the age of trust and faith. It's just to trust people, believe in people, believe they have my best interest in them. And so in healthy families, they show up on time. Hey, I'm going to be there. They're there. I'm not going to lie to you. They don't. I'm not going to get mad. They don't get mad. Right? Hey, I messed up last week and I want to apologize to you. They show you how to be humble, how to trust people, how to have consistency. What happens in toxic families? They don't show up on time, they blame you, then you tell them I reminded you to come, then they say you just want to argue with me, and this is why I don't like to talk to you. They blame you, they gaslight you for their problems. They give away your secrets. Oh, I can't tell your aunt. I can't tell them. Well, maybe you should have done it. Right? They get mad at you for things that they said they weren't. Oh, well, now that you told me, I'm banning you. Now that you said this, they take away any kind of level of respect. They don't apologize. If you ever ask for an apology, good luck. They're still waiting for that apology. Well, what about what you do? Oh, you're perfect. Oh, you do everything great. So you never have the confidence that they're on the same side as you. So you innately create a sense of distrust inside of you. And you feel like you can't have authentic relationships. And no matter how much you want to trust somebody, they've shown you no reason not to trust them. all the reason in the world to be like, this makes sense. Can't let it go. There's a little piece of you in there that's like, can't let that go. So you can't trust people. So let's review here. 1 to 5, I don't know how to feel. 6 to 11, I don't know who I am. And 12 to 24, I don't trust people. Now just having those neglects, those traumas, you're going to have a lot of issues in your personal life, your work life, your family life, and your overall life. So just something to think about when you guys are wondering why trauma affects people or how trauma affects us. That's how it affects us. Each stage of development has its necessities of what it needs to be successful, and when it is not provided those things during those developmental stages, you have to actively learn these skills, actively learn these new abilities, learn these ways of thinking so that you can come out ahead. I'll make another video at some point teaching you guys how to alleviate each stage of development so that you have some insight. So, keep around, like the video and give me some responses of what you guys need support with. But that's another way of looking at trauma and how it affects us from 0 to 24. Alright, you guys, thank you again for coming and hearing my video. Take it easy and keep safe out there, alright? Later.
Hey everybody, it's Sebastian here again with another video, and today we're going to be talking about feelings. And specifically, I want to talk about how feelings really are not what you think they are. So, let's start from the beginning. Feelings influence our behavior, right? So, if we remember one of our previous videos, we talk about how based on how you feel is based on how you're gonna act. So if you're hungry, you're gonna eat. If you're tired, you're gonna lay down. If you're feeling lonely, you want to socialize. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you might want to get away from people. So depending on how you feel, it's gonna really gauge on how you're gonna behave. The more extreme the feelings are, the more extreme the behaviors tend to be. For example, if you have a horrible toothache, excruciatingly painful, you probably won't be able to focus on anybody outside of yourself because you're feeling so bad. You may even want to pull it out. You may even consider doing reckless behavior because the feelings are so extreme that the behavior to alleviate that feeling is going to be just as extreme, which is why people tend to act extreme when they're feeling extreme. So, the way you feeling causes a behavior. Alright, we know this. Feeling, behavior. The second part of feelings that we need to remember is that feelings are a reaction to stimulation based on experience. Now, what does that mean? When you see a name pop up on a phone, that name influences how you feel. You might say, "What's up, boo thing? How you doing?" Or you might say, "Yeah, I told you, it's under the drawer. It's in my room under the drawer." So, two different feelings based on a name, right? So, what does that mean? Sight, right? Sight is a sense. Senses stimulate us, right? So we can say touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing, all those things, touch, yeah, we talked about it. All those things cause a type of stimulation, and those stimulations cause a feeling. Whether this song makes me feel like dancing or makes me feel like leaving, okay? Whether this food makes me feel like eating or makes me feel like avoiding food for the rest of my life, right? Depending on the thing that's stimulating me and my experience with that thing is going to depend how I feel. What do I mean? Well, if I've never had a meal before and you say, "Hey, what do you want to eat that? Or do you like that?" Well, I don't know if I like it. I've never had it. I don't have enough experience to gauge what has happened with whatever we're talking about. But as I experience it, yeah, sure, I'll have more to tell you how I feel about this subject because I have more knowledge about it now. Why is that important? Well, one thing to note, our senses, as we get older, tend to diminish, right? Well, our sight doesn't get as good, our hearing doesn't get better, our taste doesn't get, the touch, everything, our senses diminish over time. Right? Whether we get an illness that affects our sight, our hearing, right? Maybe we got something that happened and something has been affected. Maybe I lost my eyesight because of an accident of some sort. Many reasons why we might lose part of our senses. Some people lost some of their taste because of COVID, right? Again, things get impacted by different events in our life. So the probability of your senses going down over time increases, right? However, experience goes up. So regardless of your life, your experience goes up, right? So your experience in the world doesn't change, or it changes constantly, right? So I'll give you this scenario here. Imagine you have a new employee, right? Doesn't know the job, but you have a veteran of 10, maybe 15 years show up, right? Well, who's going to figure out the problem more likely in a quicker rate, right? The person with more experience. He doesn't need perfect vision to know what he's looking for. He knows what to look for, right? Versus the guy that may be younger, that has better vision, he doesn't have experience. He doesn't know what he's looking for, right? So the guy, even though he has worse vision, he has experience, which helps him to redefine or kind of highlight what he wants, and he doesn't need that perfect vision. Which is why, as we get older, our experience with our senses creates our intuition, right? So that's why sometimes you can walk in a room like, someone's been in here. I can tell something's different here. When you're leaving your house and you're saying, man, I'm forgetting something, I don't know what it is. You know you're forgetting something. You can feel the sensation, but you don't know what you're forgetting. And this is where intuition kicks in. This is where really feelings are your sixth sense. The little thing you feel in there, that is feelings. And what feelings are is the summary of our life and our senses to help give us guidance to how to navigate the world. When I don't know how to feel, I don't know how to act. When I don't know how to act, I don't know how to feel, or I tend to feel worse, right? Because I don't know how to engage in the situation. A good example of this may be, let's say you cook a meal at your house, and you constantly cook that meal so you can kind of gauge about how long it's going to take you, right? Because you've done it before. But if you go to a friend's house, and you don't know their setup, you don't know where their pots and pans are, you don't know where all the things that they store, that 15, 20-minute meal may become a 30, 40-minute meal. And every time you open a drawer, you're going to start feeling flustered. You're going to start getting frustrated because you're not having that same type of finesse that you would have had at your house because you don't know the environment. You don't know how to have intuition because you don't know where things are at, so you have to develop that, right? So this is where it's important to know if I don't know how to feel, sometimes it's just because I don't have enough experience with the thing that I need to know how to feel. Now, this also plays into things, for example, muscle memory. We can talk about athletes, right? So let's look at a boxer, right? A boxer's got to do shadow boxing, has to do 1, 2, 3, has combo moves that they keep practicing to build intuition. Now, when we talk about athletes getting in the zone, in the flow, right? Knowing how to feel out their opponent, right? Literally feel out about where do I have access, and I need to know within an instant, within a whim, what I'm going to do and how I'm going to approach. That's intuition, right? Okay. Well, we also want to get in their head, right? We want to get in an opponent's head. We want to get in their head. What does that mean? Why is it important to get in their head? Because the second I start questioning my intuition, the quality of my work or quality of my gameplay, whatever I'm doing, goes down. Because I'm no longer in a flow state. I'm disrupting my flow throughout that process. I'm questioning myself. And the second I start questioning myself, I start messing up. I start reducing the quality of whatever I'm doing, right? Because I don't have intuition anymore. So if I don't think my combo is going to work anymore, I have to start questioning my combo. But that whole part is now messing the fluidity of what I'm doing now. And so when we think about getting in our head, that's what we're talking about. We're disrupting ourselves from just feeling the environment because we don't feel comfortable enough in this environment. Why is this important? Well, sometimes we want to disrupt that process, right? Let's say there's a situation where I want to react immediately and I want to respond and I have a tendency to react in a very negative state. Well, I want to disrupt that intuition. I want to disrupt that flow and say, are you really going to get what you want if you just say whatever you're about to say? Yeah, in the moment it might feel good, but is this going to really play out in about the next 2 weeks? Is this really what you want to do with the situation? So I need to kind of hold myself back, consider what I'm doing, and then say, okay, where am I going with this, right? In that moment, I need to disrupt my intuition, which is to fight back, get angry, and tell them to love me, and don't disrespect me, right? But other times, there's times where I can see something's off. I can feel my intuition kicking, like, ooh, I should say something, and I don't. But then, later on, the thing that I should have said something about ends up happening, and now I feel stupid, and I can't tell somebody, I knew this was going to happen. They're going to say, well, why didn't you say anything? And it's true, I should have said something, which is why if my intuition says I should say something, I should say something. Because my feelings know how to gauge the world around me. I can choose to ignore how I feel. I can choose to do something else, but that doesn't mean fundamentally I didn't have the intuition to know what was going to happen. And every time I ignore my intuition, I ignore how I feel, I tend to feel worse, not better. So what do we want to do here? Well, I want to teach you guys to remember that in order to really push forward, to understand, we need to have more experience. We need to understand that feelings really are just our experience in the world. When we don't know how to feel, we need to have more experience out there. And when we're feeling something, we need to listen to that part of ourselves because our body's communicating a need, and we got to figure out how to meet that need. All right, guys, it's been a pleasure teaching this to you, and I'll see you guys around on the next video. And also, don't feel free to ask any questions, leave any comments or anything if you need any support, and subscribe just so you guys get more content. Take it easy. Thanks. Bye. Hey everybody, it's Sebastian again with another video, and today I got a new topic for you guys. We're going to be talking about motivational interviewing. Now, there's a very specific subsection of motivational interviewing, and again, I think motivational interviewing, I'm going to add right now, I think it's a great tool, so I would highly suggest if you're a therapist or just anybody in general, definitely look it up. The tools in there are very valuable. But today specifically, we're going to be talking about the OARS, okay? So this is what we're going to be looking over. Now, what do I use MI for? Well, in my practice, in my life, in a lot of different things, and I highly suggest it, especially for people on the spectrum or people with any kind of neurodivergent brain that doesn't really know how to communicate sometimes, this is that secret key, the golden answer, you could call it, to help you get through some of these conversations, especially if you're not good with small talk or how to engage with people. So this is really going to highlight ways of rolling with resistance, right? Kind of getting more in tune with the people around you, getting more connected with the people around you. So here, let's look at some of the things we have here. So the first thing we're going to have here is open-ended questions, okay? So what are open-ended questions and why are they valuable? Well, open-ended questions are pretty simple. It's, let's say someone says, hey, how's your day been, right? So how's your day been? So that's very open. Like, it's not, I can't just say, I mean, I could say good, but if someone says good, then I can say, what made your day good, right? And so now I'm adding another open-ended question, like, tell me more about what made your day good, right? So now I'm increasing the capacity of our conversation style, right? Another thing could be like, yeah, I just watched a movie. I can say, hey, give me your thoughts on the movie. That's an open-ended question, right? So it's encouraging them to discuss with me now what's happening with the movie and what's happening with, their thoughts and their desires or their perspective with this movie or whatever happened, right? Let's say someone's like, yeah, I had a good day. Tell them, hey, tell me about what made your day good today, right? Well, tell me anything interesting happened, right? So again, I'm opening up the discussion. So who or when or tell me more or can you expand on or, give me some more information or I'd like to understand, so different ways of opening people up. The reason why it's really nice to have open-ended questions is it really helps people feel that you're listening, because if I'm going to ask you a question, I have to understand what I'm talking about first. So open-ended questions can be very helpful in being able to open up dialogue and conversations, especially when it feels like I don't really know where else to go. Well, enhancing the last topic that we talk about and opening up and expanding further into that topic will allow me to get closer in connection, okay? So open-ended questions, really good way to keep a dialogue conversation going, and I encourage you to see if you can get multiple open-ended questions going, all right? Affirmations. Well, let's talk about what affirmations are. Affirmations are, hey, you did a really good job today, or hey, when I walked in, I really appreciated that you acknowledged, so I just want to give you credit for that, or hey, I appreciate you even having the time to talk to me today or hang out with me, so I wanted to affirm, right, give you an affirmation that I want to tell you you're doing a good job and I'm proud of you, right? So affirmations can, again, highlight, right, positive things about people around us, and it gives us an opportunity of something to talk about, right? Conversation starter. So don't be afraid to use affirmations, or hey, thanks for opening up about that, or hey, thanks for reaching out, or calling me, or contacting me, or hey, I appreciate you being able to be vulnerable with me today. Good thing to kind of add in there when you're not know where the conversation to go. Sometimes that is the next part of the conversation. Okay, let's look at reflections. What are reflections? Well, so let's say someone says, I had a good day. I'm going to say, so you had a good day, right? I'm reflecting back what I'm hearing from this person. It was really hard today. Oh, so you had a lot going on? No, it was just super confusing. It was a really hard day, right? So even though I got the message wrong, where I was misreading what the word they were using with me, at the end of the day, it didn't matter because they still feel hurt. I attempted to show you that I'm interested in the topic you're presenting, and so this was their ability to respond to me in a way where now we both understand we're on the same page, right? So reflections, again, I'm going to reflect back what I'm hearing, maybe add a little detail in there, but I don't want to change it too much. I just want to show you that I'm hearing you for what you're saying, right? Or I'm going to add a little extra. So like I said, it was a long day. Oh, so you had a lot, it was just a lot to do. Or no, it was just really boring. So again, I'm just saying something that's in similarity and reflection to what you're stating right now. So I'm adding to it, but I'm also not going outside of the realm of what you're talking about, which makes it, again, feel like it's on the same page. The last part is summaries. So let's think about what summaries are, right? Summaries is when you go ahead and take back, okay, A, B, and C, and then you add them. So let me make sure. So this happened, and this happened, so it led to this. Is that what I'm understanding? And so you're going through A, B, C to make sure with the person that you guys are on the same page, right? So I want to summarize everything I've heard. They may say, oh no, did you miss this context, or this is what happened. Now the reason why all of these things are really important is because in order to do any of these things, I have to be a part of the conversation. In order to ask an open-ended question, I have to know what we're talking about. In order to give you an affirmation, I have to notice details about you, right? In order to have a reflection, I have to understand the context of what we're talking about. And in order to summarize, I have to have been listening the entire time. So when people feel like they're not being heard by other people, think about how we can utilize MI in those instances or moments where, is there an open-ended question I could ask right now? Is there an affirmation I can provide? Is there a reflection I can make right now? Or is there some way I can summarize everything we just talked about? Now, the reason why this is super helpful, especially if you're on the spectrum, right, or you have communication problems, is sometimes I want to talk, but I don't want to make it about me. Oh my God, that happened to me once. The second I do that, there's another person's going to say, oh, it's always about you, isn't it? It's always about what you think. And that's not our goal, right? This is when these tools come into place. So remember, when I'm a little confused about how to be able to converse with people, or I'm not good with small talk, think about motivational interviewing, think about the OARS of MI, and how we can try to use them to, again, open up conversation, dialogue with people, but most of all, allow the people around us to feel validated and heard, so that one day we can ask for the same from them. All right, guys, so again, motivational interviewing, test out your skills. If you have any questions, let me know, and feel free to follow and like and keep following for more information and guide as they come out. All right, take it easy, guys.